Coming up that we to introduce Bill Johnston, who is a historian at Wesleyan University, who spent last year on sabbatical at Harvard and is there again this year teaching. So that was sort of easy to sort of reel him in. But this is one of those sort of fortuitous things. We ended up at a meal together last June, I guess it was, and we got talking, and all of a sudden I realized that the work that he's doing is so interdisciplinary. It really brings the environment into the arts. And so I just thought, what a great opportunity to sort of think about corralling him to give one of our lunch and learn. So I'm just fascinated to see where this goes, and I want to thank you again for taking time out of your day. I know he has to leave right afterwards to go teach, so he won't probably be lingering much at all, but I'm sure if you had questions, he might be able to answer them either via me or through email. So I'm going to give you this now.
We do this. Put it over here.
There you go.
There we go. Let's see. Okay, we good? So first of all, thank you very much, Colin, for this very kind invitation. It's really a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you to Environmental Studies and several friends I have, Susan and Gary. Thank you very much for coming, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to come see some slides and hear me talk a little bit about the Fukushima incident and some ways of approaching it. As it says, this is really a vehicle for using Fukushima as a performance art space, but the reverse is probably even more important, that using performance to emphasize what has happened in Fukushima and what's ongoing. I got into this in a very roundabout way. Eiko and Koma, whom some of you might have heard of, are a dance duo who have been working in this country since about 1977. They started off in Japan working together in the Buto tradition. And after coming here, have done a number of works. I wanted to show this piece, River, from 1995, to show that they've had a long-standing environmental interest and commitment to issues regarding to environment with which they've engaged through their artistry. This is three of the most important Buto performers, this person being Ono Kazuo, this person being Ono Yoshito, his son, and this being Hijikata Tatsumi. Eiko and Koma started off studying with Hijikata Tatsumi in the 70s, and then moved to work with Ono Kazuo and his son Yoshito. However, they do not consider themselves as direct descendants of the Buto tradition. They do not call themselves Buto performers for a number of reasons, which, if you're interested, I mean, Eiko, I think, is watching, so if you would like to be in touch with her, I could probably make that happen. She's always interested in comments. But rather, I would say it is safe, though, to say that they're coming out of the Buto genealogy. One of the things, of course, that the Buto genealogy is coming to is an aesthetic which arises out of the atomic bombings of Japan and the post-war Japanese experience. The atomic bombings, of course, were horrific. And their ecological impact, of course, was something which people tracked quite closely at the time. However, one of the really interesting things about the atomic bombings is because it was an aerial burst and because of the materials involved, the lingering radiation actually was fairly minimal. Within about a year or so, it was absolutely safe to be, building and living on ground zero underneath where the bombs went off. And people were doing so probably with very little ill effect, although I would not say without any ill effect. The Buto tradition, again, comes out of, how do we deal with this, and trying to imagine a particularly Japanese aesthetic to do so. One of the things, of course, that resulted from the atomic bombings was a real, what they called nuclear allergy at the time. Of course, in the United States, as soon as the atomic bombs were dropped, almost immediately we had government officials coming out and saying, but the atom is our friend, too. We can make energy from the atom, and look, we've got lots and lots of electrical energy, and it's clean and it's safe. Isn't this wonderful? Sure. And we started to build, planning and building nuclear reactors for electrical generation plants, primarily with General Electric and Westinghouse being the two main manufacturers. In Japan, the Japanese government was also looking for ways to expand energy, and General Electric and Westinghouse were looking for ways to expand their business base, and they got together with Toshiba and decided maybe we could build electrical generation plants, nuclear electrical generation plants in Japan. And one of the things which they do is then to ask themselves, well, how do we make nuclear power friendly? We have this little problem where, about less than 10 years ago, here's what people remember. A lot of people remembered this experience directly, but let's make it friendly. And how do we do that? Well, with Plutonium Boy, as he says here, Pluto-kun, as he was called in Japanese, Pluto-kun, he says, don't be scared, I'm not a ghost, I'm plutonium, I'm your friend. And the really amusing thing, if you look this up and check out the video on YouTube, I'm pretty sure it's still available, you can find it, you'll find Plutonium Boy, drinking down the plutonium, going, look, no problem. Yes, exactly, jaw drops, because as you probably know, plutonium is one of the most poisonous substances known, period. That if you have a little tiny bit of plutonium in your system, it will invariably kill you. But how do we make plutonium friendly? Well, it's with animation, with propaganda. They then went to numerous communities within a certain area from the major metropolitan areas, and one of them close to Tokyo was just north in an area called Fukushima, where they started building not only nuclear power plants, but gas-powered plants and oil-powered plants as well. Now, one of the things that came out of this, so let me back up just a second here with Eiko and Coma. About 2005, almost 10 years ago, I believe I have the right year, the director for the Center for the Arts at Wesleyan calls me up and says, would I like to come to a lunch with somebody named Eiko Otake? They're going to be, having performers, professional performers, see if they could integrate performance and dance within non-arts classrooms. And I said, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Sure, I'd come to a lunch for that. So I go to this lunch, and I'm sitting there, and I have no idea who Eiko Otake was because I didn't know her last name. But she walks in, and I'm going, wait a minute, you're Eiko and Koma Eiko. She was like, yeah. And I said, oh, I know you from your work. And I have a mutual friend who's a photographer who had done photographs of her, Phil Traeger, beautiful photographs. And he had shown me their work, and I was really excited. And she immediately said, well, what are you working on? I said, well, what I'd really like to do is teach a course on Japan and the atomic bomb. It's something I've been planning, but really haven't ramped it up full scale yet. And she's like, well, that's very interesting. I'm working, she said, on the master's degree on nuclear literature, nuclear bomb literature, hibaku bungaku in Japanese, and in particular a writer named Hayashi Kyoko Hayashi. If you're interested, and I highly recommend it, there's a book called From Trinity to Trinity, which Eiko translated from the Japanese original. And it's a story of how Hayashi Kyoko, who was 14, I believe, in Nagasaki when the bomb was dropped, she was very close to the epicenter and was lucky to escape. She did. She has not, thank heavens, suffered from extreme radiation illness, and she wasn't showered with glass or any of these horrible things that many other people who survived had to live with for many decades. But she became a writer of fiction dealing with the bombing, as well as a number of other issues. And Eiko had focused on her work and then translated this novella in which she goes to the Trinity site. And her conclusion is this: I thought we were the first to experience the atomic bombs in Japan. We weren't. The first to experience the atomic bombs were all the living beings under the test bomb at Trinity. And she, has a very, strong feeling of empathy and sympathy for this place, for the environment, for the land, for the animals that experienced that first atomic bombing. So that's where Eiko and I were coming from, and immediately hit it off, said, let's do this class together, which we ended up teaching twice on Japan and the atomic bomb. We integrated a movement section with it so that it's a 1.5 credit course with a 0.5 credit required movement section. And it's not dance. but she has very interesting exercises which she integrates with the rest of the class and absolutely transforms the classroom in magical ways. I'd be happy to talk about that later if there's interest. 2 years ago, I was invited to be a faculty fellow of what Wesleyan calls the College for the Environment. And I thought that was a really exciting idea. And I said, but there's only one project that I'm working on, or have wanted to work on for a long time. And it's a project on mountaintop removal mining in West Virginia. I mean, so not a Japan-based thing at all, but very much having to do with issues of, capitalism, environment, consumption, electricity, and how all of these mix up together. And so we ended up doing a course on mountaintop removal mining. Unfortunately, because of the lighting, it's hard to see this photo. But this is an image where, I don't know if you're familiar with the phenomenon. If not, I strongly urge you to read up a little bit about it. But it's where, at one point, there was a mountain that actually went up something like this, if you go down the whole area. And they blow up the mountaintops, shove them into the valleys, and then proceed to take out the coal strip by strip. Of course, it destroys the waterways. That's the biggest damage that it does. I mean, taking off the mountain's bad enough. But what they're doing is destroying all of the sources of water that are where the rain is coming out of this area and the natural ecosystems that exist there. The damage is absolutely horrific. At this point in time, they have destroyed a surface area that's about 2/3 the size of the state of Connecticut across West Virginia and neighboring states. So we taught a course on this, and in the process of teaching this course, Eiko was, of course, working on her own artistic career, and she and Koma were asked if they would like to do a project in Philadelphia that would be sponsored by the Pennsylvania Academy for the Arts. That was the curator, Harry Philbrick, suggested would be Eiko, a body, and a station. And they were excited about doing it, but unfortunately, Koma has experienced some ankle problems, an ankle injury, which is very slow in recovering, so he's not able to do any dance or movement at this point. And so Eiko started to do it as a single project. After having this proposed to her, she said to me, well, why don't we really combine our nuclear interests, our Japan interests with this performance? Let's go to Fukushima and do photos of her performing in the stations that have been closed by both the tsunami and nuclear radiation. Primarily because of the nuclear radiation. I mean, we didn't go all the way up the coast. I said, well, that sounds exciting. So just as a footnote, she's already started the Philadelphia project. If any of you are, by any chance, in Philadelphia on any of the 3 coming Fridays, this Friday, the 17th through the 24th, if you go to eikoandkoma.com, or if you go to the PAFA, the Pennsylvania Academy for Fine Arts website, you can find the times for that. Or you could ask me, I can tell you later. But this was actually the dress rehearsal on the 26th of September, and I couldn't resist. So these are my photos of her there. I couldn't resist but get this one where Eiko, of course, is doing her entry, and Koma is pretending to be just somebody sitting there watching, checking his watch, but he's actually performing. Next. So this was last week in the station. You might recognize Professor Kaminishi here taking a photograph. So in January of this year, we went to Fukushima. I was already there doing research, and she's like, well, I'll come over and let's do a trip. So we ended up doing a 4-day trip. And we started, so just so you can get at your bearings, this is the center of Japan, Nagoya. Anybody who knows Japan laughs at this point. Tokyo up here, of course, I mean, Nagoya actually calls itself Chubu, but Chicago? So, somebody said Hoboken. I mean, if you say Nagoya to people in Japan, they inevitably laugh. I don't know why. I'd say that because I've got a place in my heart for it. I've lived there for several years. Osaka here, Kyoto here, Tokyo here, and then this is the area we visited. The nuclear plant that melted down, let me see if I can get it right here. I think it's this star right here. I've got a close-up. But the radiation from the plant went up this way. They were expecting when it started that the wind would blow it out to sea, not a problem. It actually reversed, went up this way, and ended up with a very, very bad trail of radiation all through this area here. Koriyama was affected, Fukushima City was affected with relatively high levels of radiation. Recently, they have come out and stated that bad radiation got all the way down to this part of Miyagi and even into Chiba Prefecture. So the radiation really did spread quite a distance. This is a close-up that shows you where some of the locations, these stars are actually the locations where we shot photos. She did performance. This one right here, that is the Daiichi, the #1 nuclear reactor, which experienced the meltdowns, is still, of course, leaking radiation at a horrific rate into the ocean and the surrounding environment. And all of the areas up this way are quite severely affected. We got as close as here, which was about, as I figure, it's about 4 miles as the gamma ray flies. And then up this way, which is probably about 6 miles. So we actually got pretty close. In some of these places, the first time we went in January, we didn't bring a Geiger counter. We're both like, I don't think I want to know. We're going to do this. And at our age, it's okay. You know, if you were to go in your 20s, I'd say take a Geiger counter and be careful because it could affect you long term if you get in some bad places. Last July, then in July, we did a second trip, and you'll see images from both. We did take a Geiger counter along with this. For the most part, it wasn't bad. In a couple places, and I'll show you where, it was actually this place right here. So going this way, we ended up with some very, very high readings. And it's because we crossed the fence. We were where we were not supposed to be. So we started off this whole project, again, with the idea of a body in a station, going to the stations. We had no idea what we were going to get into, what we were going to see. So this is Kido Station. This is the first place we got to when we got there. We're driving around. The town was a ghost town. It was closed down. You could come into it, but you can't stay overnight. There were police patrols constantly going around to make sure that burglars weren't going through the places. Apparently, that is somewhat of a problem. I don't think too bad. If you're smart, you don't want to be running off with radioactive goods. This is a Geiger counter that was put right in front of this station. So if you look here, I believe it was over on this side. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was over on this side in front of this building. And what they did is they put these little pedestals, they cleaned it up, they set these on here. They're solar powered, so that, and they've got a battery so that they keep going all night long. And this one shows, I believe it's 2.08. It's hard to read on this, millisieverts per hour, which is fairly low. And that was low, and the highest we saw, and it was where we got nervous, it was going 12 to 13, and I said, it's time to go. This, just to give you some context now, this is a panoramic shot that I took. This is a composite of about 14, 17, I can't remember, different frames from camera. And what we're looking at are bags of soil. I'll show you close-ups here. I just want you to get an idea of the scale of the environmental impact of the radiation and how they're trying to deal with it. And I put that in quotation marks. Because what they're doing right now is they're taking soil from fields like this, taking it down about, depending on, how far down the radiation is going, anywhere from 15 to 30 centimeters, and then bagging it up and putting it into 1-ton bags, plastic bags, which is what you're seeing here. Now, one of the problems with this is that, of course, they're removing the radiation from right here. It will be sort of okay to go there. There's this other little problem if you look at the geography here. What do we have? We've got a whole bunch of mountains. Are they scraping the mountains off? No. Were the mountains covered with radiation? Yes. What's going to happen when it rains 5 years from now? I mean, what happens when it rains? What's going to happen 5 years from now? Basically, all of these low-lying areas will be covered with radioactive soil again. So, what they're saying, this is the cleanup, is actually sort of a short-term stopgap set of measures so that they can say that they've done decontamination. This is from the same image as a close-up, and you get a little bit of a sense. Here's the bags that are out here. And then if you get close, you can get a sense of, here's the single bags. Each one of those, again, is 1 ton of soil. And what they're doing, you'll see in later images, is that they are taking these bags, they're piling up into pyramids, 5, 6, 7 bags high, and then covering those with sheets of plastic for temporary storage. From close up, here's what they look like. So this is these big bags, and this is standing really, basically from me to the screen here in terms of distance. Tatsuta Station was the first station then the next day that we got to where Eiko says, okay, let me start performing. And so what you're going to see is a very interesting unfolding from some of her first, attempts at doing, performance to where it really takes off in January and then even more so in July. This is just a shot I threw in. I liked it. So here's Eiko on the station, and what she's doing is trying, first of all, when Eiko performs, there's no narrative. You don't think of it, oh, she's depicting X in particular. But in a way, what she is doing is channeling, being one with, empathizing with all of the people who've been in these places. At one point in time, this is a very, very busy station, people coming and going every day, commuting, school kids going to school back and forth, lots and lots of trains every day, both north and south. And this is actually the station now, which is the first one they've reopened furthest south from the radioactive zone. There was this summer a station, he didn't call himself station master there, he was a very interesting guy, but they've put somebody there, but the only people going there are people who are working on the decontamination. We went to another station, Tomioka, then not long after this, and this was a place, again, 3 years after, where this is what you still see. And it is because it's radioactive, they have not been able to do cleanups. If you go north of the radioactive zone, where the tsunami and earthquake hit, that is all cleaned up. I mean, you would hardly know that something happened in a lot of the areas that were very badly affected. In this area, they can't do anything because of the radiation. I'm not sure, this is the Chinese character for person. You would see it now and then on edifices, and my assumption was that these were places where there were casualties. This house, of course, was pushed up from down below. The CU is over to the right. It was pushed up over this road and was still just sitting there. This is Eiko at the station, which is there, and again, this is the kind of performance where she's getting, started really. This is the restroom. This graffiti, I assume, probably predated the disaster, just something that somebody prettied up the station a little bit. And you can see, I mean, there were cars left, the shape of the buildings in this town, Tomioka. I would urge you to look up Tomioka online. You'll find some very interesting information, and both pre and post images from the tsunami. This is the place where we went to further north, where we really shouldn't have been, probably because it was off limits. We parked the car in a place where we knew there weren't any cameras watching and the police wouldn't find it, and walked up, and it wasn't far, about a quarter mile maybe, to this Yonomori station. Sorry. She didn't do any performance this evening. It was getting late. I just shot some images. I want you to remember this image because you'll see one from the summertime. But the bicycles, these things knocked over by the earthquake, everything just as it was from 3 years before, after the earthquake. This town was not affected by the tsunami, but it was very badly affected by the radiation. Here it is, looking down Main Street, right in front of the station. Normally, this would be full of cars and people. Here it is 3 years later, and who knows when this will ever be made really public again, because this is really a pretty high radiation zone. This is where the Geiger counter went off. It was going up 13, 14, and I said, we're out of here. I'm not going to wait and see how high it goes. Part of Eiko's performance art is she uses some of the objects that she uses in her performance and asked me to take photographs of them. So in a sense, this is Eiko, but without her body. And this is a cherry tree lined street, which in the springtime would be spectacular, but of course, nobody can really enjoy it now. This is a station, Momouchi, which was the furthest south that we could get north of the radiation zone. And this gives you an idea. Then, Eiko would start performing, and it was really quite magical. I mean, when you go, if you have a chance to see an Eiko performance, it's wonderful watching her at 30th Street Station, where last week when she's doing this performance, just walking perfectly silently, slow, very slow. I mean, she moves like this for the most part. she's watching me. I'm wondering what she's thinking. I'm going to hear about this. But anyhow, very slow, and everybody's mesmerized. I mean, people, it was just amazing to watch, you know, these hundreds of people who had no idea, what's this lady doing? And all of a sudden she's walking through and then going into another part of the station and performing. And that was basically what she was doing this whole time. It was a performance basically just for me, nobody else was there, but for all of you at the same time, everybody who could possibly see this through the camera image. We ended up shooting about 3,000 images, I think it was, in January. So this is the same station coming down the stairs. This is another station not affected by the tsunami, but very close to the radiation. You see the tracks where, I mean, now you've got trees growing up through the tracks for lack of use. This is what the tracks looked like in January with the vines growing over. You'll see some pictures later of the same place with vines on it. This was in January. And then this is a place called Sakamoto, and I wanted to give you an idea. Here's what the station looked like before the tsunami hit. This is the farthest place, farthest north where we went. This is what it looked like after the tsunami hit. There were trains which were actually derailed right there. This is clearly a place where there were fatalities. It's a very tragic location. And they had to tear this down after that because it was so structurally unsound. If you go there now, well, this is what it looked like in January. Now, actually, these tracks have been removed. If you look, you can see these poles bent over. They were bent over by the force of the tsunami. It had gone over the top of this station, pulled those poles flat down and gone on. The rails down at this end had been built up or bent up, and the rails here had remained because of the tsunami going across. This had created enough of a barrier that it didn't pick up the rails on this side. But both ends of the station, the rails were totally washed away. Eiko then got up on the station. This says center station, the center of the platform. And again, you know, she just basically did her magic. This is looking in the opposite direction from where we'd seen before. And this whole area down below the ocean is quite close by, and this was all, you know, under construction now, being cleaned up. This is a station called Komagamine, which is also north of the radioactive zone. And these are just some of the images. She went inside the waiting room there. We shot some images of her there, and then she went outside. And then she went down onto the platform itself. And this image has become one that really grabs people. And it took me a long time to think about. How are we doing for time here, by the way? 32, okay. Oh, there's a clock, excellent. So this image is one that, you know, when I shot it, I mean, it's funny, if you've done a lot of photography, you'll know what I'm saying, but often there'll be times if you shoot an image and you think, I think that one has some promise to it. You know, there'll be that one that you kind of remember, and then you keep going, of course. I mean, you don't stop. I mean, just boom, boom, you got to keep working. But this is one that I thought, I think that's got some promise to it. And then when I showed it to a friend at Wesleyan, he said, oh, it's a pietà. I said, oh, wow. Yeah, okay, I can get that. You know, it's a pietà. And then I kept thinking about it is and it isn't. What's the isn't part? What's missing out of a classic pietà? What's that? Well, if you take her to be the Christ, there's no virgin. Right, and of course the pietà is always the Virgin holding the Christ body. And in a sense, here we've got the sacrificed body, you know, following that kind of iconic, you know, pose. But if I'm to think, you know, who or what is holding Eiko, it's the earth. You know, and in a sense, this is very much her dialogue with the earth. And, you know, where's the earth here? When we think of Mother Earth as, you know, one of our classic tropes for talking about the earth from many, you know, millennia ago, probably, I don't know about millennia, but hundreds of years. And that, in a sense, that's very much what she's doing here. She's dancing in a duet with the Earth itself, with this environment as it is, and all of the pain that it is suffering. Because this, again, is an area that is very much covered with radiation. The train tracks here are overgrown. I didn't include any images, but it's an area where they will not be opening this train station for a very long time because of it. The community, there's actually a bus station right in front where people come and go some degree, but right south of here is the area which is most badly affected, and as a consequence, they won't be opening it. This was a place where we got to fairly early on, and I said, Eiko, this is an amazing house. We really need to stop here, and I just want to look. And we got out and started looking, and this house was truly amazing. This is a beautiful old, not that old probably, but old style in many ways, Japanese house. It all had it was primarily tatami rooms, so rooms with the straw mats on the floor. The classic tile. My guess is this was really a fairly wealthy landholder who had lived in this place. And the tsunami had risen up here, but only about this high, only so to speak. I mean, it wasn't more than, about 6 feet or so. But that was enough to sweep through the house. It took all the belongings, swept them around, pulled a bunch of them back when the tsunami receded. And of course, it just, destroyed everything they owned, basically. Now, the real tragedy, I mean, that's bad enough, right? I mean, if you had that happen to your house, you'd be like, oh, God, what do we do now? But then the next day, boom, radioactive cloud, followed by yet another radioactive cloud when the next reactor blew up, right? And then ongoing, clouds of radiation, so that all of the belongings in here, which normally after something like a tsunami, you would go through, see what you could salvage, at least mementos that you can keep, family artifacts, things that tell the story of your family. Sorry, I get emotional because just going back there in my mind was so powerful. And there were 2 chairs, and I want for you to look very carefully. You can see one here and one there. That there's 2 chairs where a couple obviously had come and sat down and said, who knows what they thought, but they'd come and sat down there. There were boxes of shoes up in the entryway here where, obviously somebody was really into their shoes. They opened up these boxes of shoes and were looking at them, but of course they're radioactive, you can't take them out. So I said to Eiko, this is just blowing me away. And she's like, I've got to perform here. And in a sense, this transformed her whole project. And Eiko very kindly calls what we're doing a genuine collaboration, in that I'm making suggestions to her, she's making suggestions to me, and it's just been, a real, one of those experiences when you're working with somebody and the resonance is great. I mean, something creative comes out of it. So we started shooting her in front of this house. I want for you to look at these blossoms. You can see some little orange blossoms. I'm going to show you some from the summer in a minute. You can see a little stone frog here. Looking around on the ground, I found what was clearly a pure gold. I mean, gold has that look nothing else does. There was a gold earring, a beautiful thing, laying, it's fairly big, in the mud, like right about there. And I just looked at it and I thought, I hope the people find it, that they come back. And Eiko did another of her pieces. So Eiko without Eiko in front of the house. Then we went to the side of the house. So this is the road that led, this is the driveway that goes into that house right there. And then we put this here. I mean, though this is not nuclear, this is a gas-powered electrical generation plant, but it really kind of has the effect of giving a sense. And then the wind picked up her futon there. And I just loved, this sort of spirit of the earth coming out and, making her futon dance. Eiko then went to this place, this field, and performed there. If you're familiar at all with the shaman tradition, how many of you know the film Rashomon? A few of you. If you haven't seen the film Rashomon, R-A-S-H-O-M-O-N, that is a must-see. That's something that in your lifetime you need to know. I mean, you'll hear the term now and then. Somebody say, that was a Rashomon moment. You want to know what they're talking about. Best way to do it, watch the film. If you watch the film, you'll see a scene in there where there's a woman who's acting as a medium. And although it's black and white, she would be dressed like this. And in this shot, I mean, to me, Eiko is really, acting as the medium. Summer. July, this is when we went back. This is what it looked like. So if you look at this gap in the trees right here, that's this gap in the trees right here, totally overgrown. It's amazing how, the energy with which these plants are growing. I don't know how much of that is due to, radioactivity. It's said that in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that after the atomic bombings, the plants grew like crazy, like they never had before. I really don't know if there's any effect like that, but the plants were growing like crazy in this whole area. This is around that same house. Again, Eiko just doing her performances. So this is that bush that I pointed out earlier with the orange blossoms that were on it, overgrowing that driveway. This is the two chairs you could see before. Here she is in the road. Unfortunately, somebody had stolen the frog, the stone frog. I hope the owners had taken it, and I didn't see any sign of the gold earring. I hope, again, the owners got it. This is the place where I showed earlier where the bicycles had fallen over. It would be in the foreground here, and this is where we shouldn't have been because the Geiger counter was going crazy. I told Eiko, I said, you're going to perform here, you're going to do it really, really short. And I said, and you're going to wear shoes. So I was kind of insisting that she not run around barefoot like she usually does. Everybody asked when we were doing the wintertime issues. I won't go back. Well, so like she's doing things like this and at times laying down in this. And people are like, well, weren't you worried? And I'm like, I'm not getting down or anything. I'm not worried. I'm worried about Eiko. And I said, but you did take a shower at night, didn't you? And she goes like, yeah, but I didn't wash my hair. And I'm going, oh God, Eiko. No. So I'm a little worried. I told her she has to get constant checkups after this. But, here again, this is the area where close to that place, only this was the okay to go zone. The radioactivity was much lower. And this area, again, just a ghost town, unaffected by the tsunami, but absolutely devastated by the earthquake. Not really, really bad. I mean, a lot of walls fallen over and this kind of thing, but then just nobody there. And there were these announcements coming over the loudspeaker at the school where we went to after this, which kept saying, be sure that you sort your garbage out properly so that you don't mix up your different recyclables. I'm like, okay, I hope somebody's listening, because here again, they would take all of the belongings, everything that they can, put them in the 1-ton bags, and then that's to be sent off. When you ask people where, they don't know. This is the kind of place where they're doing it. This is the schoolyard, and it's really fascinating. You can look at this place on Google Maps from before the tsunami and earthquake. It was really wasn't affected. There's a bunch of cars parked out here. You can see a pool, and now they've taken these 1-ton bags, piled them up, and then they cover them with a tarp. And this is happening all around the region. This is how they're decontaminating. So they're going to places which will not reopen in the near future, piling up the radioactivity from the decontaminated zones, and then leaving them there. This is a place where the clock here shows the exact time of the earthquake that happened on 3/11, 2011, 2:59, 2:49. So this is Eiko. This is the number 2 nuclear plant, which actually had to stop. It had some problems with the earthquake. It was not badly affected, and they got it, put together again. It's not running right now. This is looking the other direction. Eiko called this kind of an equivalent of the Hiroshima Dome, in which she then did a piece she performed. This is on top of a pile. This was just roadway rubbish. These are bits of asphalt. The white is the center line. These were all, this is a seawall, and the tsunami had come up over the seawall and pushed down the railing on the top. That's what's happening there. Eiko got on top of some of the concrete performed. Then later she got on top of the seawall. I'd mentioned that she was supposed to go down left, and right here, you've got this drop here on the seawall. The other side is about twice as far down. And Eiko comes out and she started walking down this and doing these performance things. And then finally she's like, this is pretty narrow. And I said, Eiko, I didn't mean for you to go there. Go the other place where you got like 12 feet wide. I mean, this was like about the same size as the tabletops here. And you can see that's what she was walking on in the earlier image. Finding lodging was near impossible. One of the most interesting things that we did was in January, we were able to in July as well, one place, but we got lodging where the workers who are helping disassemble the reactors themselves and who are helping in decontamination were staying. Fascinating talking with those guys. You know, one, he said, yeah, I was a Yakuza driver, but I lost my license. You know, the Yakuza, of course, Japanese mafia. And I can't drive anymore, so they sent me up here. I'm like, okay, nice to meet you. He wanted me to come drink with him later. I said, no, I really have to go to bed. Anyhow, Eiko, then we stayed at another place, which was on the coast, really quite far south. And we went out. She wanted to do something on the beach, and there was a man who was out fishing. And he pulled in a fish that was like this big. He says, yeah, this will be good for 2 or 3 days with the family. I said, well, how's the radiation? He's like, you know, it's not bad because it's all going the other way. And the fishermen have stopped fishing. They're being subsidized to not fish. And as a result, the fishing stock is really doing very well here. I don't know if I would want to be eating it, frankly. So this is, again, Momouchi, where you could see in the summertime shots that it was quite overgrown. With the brown, and this is what it looked like in the summertime then. We met another American photographer there named Jake Price. I urge you to look up his work. I can't remember, it's not Silent Spring, it's Quiet Spring. Anyhow, look up Jake Price on Google, and it will lead you to his work. He recently showed some of his work at Lincoln Center. He's doing a long-term documentary with 4 individuals in which he's following them from several years ago, right after the tsunami and earthquake and radiation problems. And he's continuing with the documentary, working with them, as well as documenting this whole area. This is where you saw the tracks which were covered by the dried vines before Eiko on top of them. These are bicycles, again, school kids' bikes probably, that they just, you know, they left after they left one day and never came back and got them. And this again is on top of the Sakamoto station, looking north with Eiko performing. This is her. Next to that, people had planted sunflowers. They planted flowers. Somehow this just seemed appropriate, and that's the end. Thank you very much. How are we for time? 46, good. So any questions about any dimension of this work is fair game, and if I can't answer, hey, I mean, Eiko's supposed to be watching. If she is, I bet she could call and say, hey, no, that wasn't right, you know, or something. So she is watching? Hello?
Hello?
Eiko?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So,
I've been watching and I've been listening.
So what did I get wrong?
Not that I noticed. We'll take a whole evening to talk over.
Okay.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Well, no, thank you for watching. So my guess is that, you know, this is a great chance where some of the people present here can actually ask you questions and communicate with you. So I think let's use that opportunity that way. Yeah, I'll repeat the question so that we don't have mics for people, okay?
I would love to ask Eiko, how much is pre-planned? How much is provides at the moment? Do you have an exact idea of what you'll do for each performance, or do you improvise it as it's happening?
So the question is, how much of what you do in your performances is pre-planned, and how much of it is spontaneous?
In Fukushima, it was actually quite spontaneous. Only preparation I made is to select the variety of costumes, and actually created a futon specifically for Fukushima. I premeditated the sense of color tones, and what could be possibly make some kind of a help to my mind. And it was cold in January, so I wanted to protect myself by bringing futon. And other than that, I think I pretty much kind of was there trying to figure out how to place my body.
Yes.
What was the hardest part or the hardest moment during the
So what was the hardest part in being in these emotionally charged locations?
You know, I felt very immobile. You know, I was so, you know, it's one thing that I had a knowledge, but being there is a whole different thing. And I've been there already in 2011, so I thought I would be prepared, you know, but then going with Bill with an intention of taking a photograph, but I really couldn't really think about it, you know. I mean, my brain stopped working. I was angry. I had a full of remorse. So it was difficult to come to the place where I can literally dance. But a sense of responsibility, you know, I brought Bill there, you know, like I can't just not do anything. So it took me several days really to get to the place where I can work with him. And I really appreciate he's been very patient with me that way.
Great.
You mentioned anger, and when I see Bill's photographs, I see pain and loss, very aesthetically presented. I wonder, what else are you projecting? Anger at the government policy, at the government failures after the tragedy? Could you comment a little bit more about the things you're trying to express?
Eiko, could you hear that?
Yeah, it was very clear. So
okay,
I was angry, but anger was not only, you know, directed to the very people. Because I think I was angry because Japan, as one of the countries so bound with earthquake and typhoon, tsunami, I think having a nuclear power itself is very ridiculous. You know, it's just like, you know, the science of probability alone will make it stupid to, you know, to be making that many of the nuclear plants in that small land. And so, you know, and having known those things had existed, and myself and many other people who are against that as a policy, but yet haven't really done more work, I was angry to myself. I'm angry to my own generation because many people who are in the power of decision making are my generation. You know, they are the CEOs, they are the government employees and high-rank people. So coming from the 60s movement, I felt my own generation are actually having been responsible, you know, for the disaster. Not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. Negligence really, stupidity, absurdity. And that's what I was feeling really deep inside of my body. It's a sense of despair. And in a sense, long run, I'm very glad I went there with Bill, rather than just watching it from outside or from a visitor's point of view. It now has been internalized in my body, and working with him, selecting the photos, making a video of the photos, had already been a process for me to be dealing with that. So it has become artistic work, but I think bottom line, my remorse is my biggest inspiration.
Just as a footnote, if anybody would like to see the videos that Eiko has made of the images, go to her website, eikoandcoma.org, and you can, under videos, look there, or else you can look on the New York Times. I can't remember, last week they ran an article about this project and the Philadelphia project, and they have links to there as well. So if you just look up Eiko under the New York Times, and from last week, it'll pop up. Yes?
I would like to thank you both for your work, and both presentations were very interesting. I was wondering if you could tell us something about whether you've been in contact with people who have been affected, and if you could share something about that.
Could you hear that, Eiko?
No, I couldn't hear.
Okay, so if you've been in contact with people who've been directly affected, could you share some of that? And she gave us very kind thanks, so I should pass that along. Thank you for being here.
This is hard, you know, because I thought about this. What I do is any meaning to the very people who are affected? No, I have not made an effort to show to the victims I work primarily with my American audience, and I feel like what I do become available, through internet. But I did not want to be too timid by thinking about victims' reception, because there's not much I can do for them, really, except that through my work, I resist people forgetting about it. I resolve that I remember this. I resolve that I go back there. So this really may not be very sensible for the people who had actually been evacuated. But I hope that I'm not ashamed of the work to them if they see it. But I didn't make it for them, particularly.
Other questions, comments?
I just want to say thank you. It was really an amazing presentation, and I feel that you could have shown the pictures with you not there, dancing, and it would have been stark, but you really wouldn't have captured it. But I also really appreciated the narration over the pictures, and I'm curious if you've ever worked together in a way where you have actually tried to narrate over a video, just your heart into it, or is it just a performance? Because I feel like the teamwork here was really powerful to hear your stories as you're presenting her work. So this is really a question for both of you.
Could you hear that, Eiko?
Yes, I did, and I totally agree with him. I've been begging Bill to give me a contextualized, kind of speech or a little memo. And I think I want to really make this throughout a presentation of collaboration. So we go, I dance, he takes a photo, he selects, we select together, I make a video, we probably make a book, we do exhibition, and I very much want his scholarly self and his artist self combined make a necessary and effective comment. I think it means a lot to the people to have that comment along with the photos.
In that regard, I wonder if there's something about each moment. So in taking a photo and having a frame, is there something about capturing this in the moment? Or is the photo in it just a small piece of what the performance is supposed to be? So I guess I'm asking, is that the photo becoming a new type of performance? So you have the performance itself, and of course you could video that, and it wouldn't be the same as being there, but it would be more like the performance. But if there's something new that's created in the photograph that is a different kind of performance, that's incorporating the original.
Could you hear that, Eiko?
No, I couldn't understand.
So the question is does the photograph itself become a new kind of performance separate from the performance itself? Or is it just simply a kind of a representation of this long flow of the performance, which you would get to all of in a video presentation, for example?
I think the photographing dance has so much potential that I wasn't even aware of. Because the video is only minus many elements of the performance. You're not in the same room, you don't really feel other people's presence there. Video only gives such a little part of the performance. However, photos, because Bill or any photographer cut into the time and they choose time, it becomes so much potential that it makes viewers to imagine what's before and what's after. So when it's captured in the right moment, I think the moment of the photo has all the time before and all the time after. And I think it really carries a sense of movement, both the body and mind. And I think it's much more effective and affective to the viewers' mind. I really finding this extremely positive experience for myself. It's not the same as seeing the dance in a real performance. It's a very different kind of art form.
Yeah, I would want to say that I see it as something new as well. I mean, I love watching performance. I've loved watching Eiko and Koma. but I would urge you, if you can, to take a look at the videos that Eiko has put together, because she's pointed out that, gee, maybe this is a kind of new art form, and I don't know I would put it that large, but at least maybe it's something which has not been done as much as it could be with dance in the past, and it really makes one see the dance quite differently. Other questions or comments? Getting close to the bewitching hour here. Yes?
What's next?
Eiko, what's next?
Oh, what's next? Well, I'm just barely surviving this station project, and Bill is also photographing the station project. And in fact, there's a really beautiful small video I made out of his photographing me. And when people are passing by my body, many people are indifferent. Many people are just watching a little bit, but not very much. And the mix of the people's relationships to my body and the station, how busy they are. Sometimes people have no place to go. It means they're not busy. All this variation of the people's existence, I think it's something that I want to follow up. So I think I would like to continue some kind of a collaboration with Bill. I want to make sure that my reaction and the relationship to Fukushima survives. I will do my best effort, not to move on too much, just sake of moving on. I want to continue my attention and my going to those places. And probably, becoming more naked and more naked than ever in terms of my mind as an artist. I want people to be able to see my mind, just because that's a good way for me to develop my mind.
So just for people who don't know, naked is one of the main themes that Eiko has worked with for many years. I mean, quite literally, she's performed naked in front of large audiences. And there's, hope you don't mind my telling the joke. The people would come up to her and say, "Oh, Eiko, I didn't recognize you with your clothes on." But because she was so famous for performing naked, but it's not new to such. I mean, it's naked as a concept, and how do we basically, totally clothed, have the courage to go in front of other people naked and just be ourselves in a way. Eiko, you're in Philadelphia.
Yes, I'm in Philadelphia because I'm performing tomorrow. So this is the one that's meeting you because you're there. Right. I just want to say one thing. The first visit, I couldn't wash my hair because I was just that exhausted mentally. I barely can take a shower. And I just was so devastated. So there was just a sense of how close to my limit of my capacity as just a human being.
Eiko, thank you so much for participating. I really appreciate your being here.
Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you for everyone for seeing and working on this matter.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.